Rob Miracle here for Yo Photo Dude, coming to you from sunny Casa Milagro. A couple of people have asked me how I created this photo of a hummingbird. Instead of trying to explain it in text, I thought a video that explains the process would be much more useful. There are really a couple of questions here. The first is the technical question, which gets into gear, settings, and post-processing. There's quite a bit of photography going on here. The second question, which I'm going to attempt to answer first, is how did I get the hummingbird there in the first place? During COVID, I discovered birding. Not only could I enjoy this bit of nature while trapped in the house, when I finally did get to go outside, I could go to places away from people and enjoy nature and animals as well. And I think this is what sparked my love of wildlife photography. I invested in a couple of feeder pole systems, which includes the poles themselves, shepherd's hooks to hang the feeders from, and of course the feed. I put out a variety of different types of feed like suet, mealworms, and various seed mixes. The feeders matter too. Some are hard for larger birds like cardinals or robins to land on, but favor small birds like finches and sparrows. Others are good for grippy birds like woodpeckers, but harder for those that have less clingy feet. Feeders draw more than birds. Squirrels are common, but raccoons and possums have found their way to the feeders as well. I have one pole system that's difficult for the mammals to get to, and then I have one that's squirrel friendly, because after all, squirrels are our friends too. Here in North Carolina, the ruby-throated hummingbird is rather common during the summer months. Hummingbirds are attracted to red things like flowers, so you can get a hummingbird-friendly feeder, and with a little patience, you can attract them. Hummingbirds have a special diet. They're not going to munch down on the seeds. They thrive on nectar. You can make hummingbird-friendly nectar quite easily. It's simply 1 part sugar to 4 parts water. Bring it to a boil in a saucepan until the sugar dissolves, and after it cools down, you can fill your feeder. It's only good for a couple of days, so don't make too much, and don't superfill your feeder up. Store the rest in the fridge. Also know that nectar likes to create mold if you leave it out too long. You'll need to keep your feeder mold-free, which means changing the nectar every couple of days and cleaning the feeder. This particular feeder is very easy to spot mold and clean. Other things like nectar as well. Squirrels will drink it like it's wine, and the ants, well, the ants will come as well. A good hummingbird feeder will have ant defenses like moats that can help keep the ants from getting into the feeder, but none are perfect. I originally had this feeder hanging from a pole on my deck, but between the squirrels and the ants, I found this suction cup holder and placed it on our bay window instead. This is just right outside our dining nook, and it makes a great place for us to watch them from. So this spot works pretty well. Back to birds in general. They like to come to their feeders and land on something nearby, usually a branch or some other perch. They'll survey the feeder and then come in and feed. Getting photos of the birds on the actual feeder isn't very natural looking, and the feeders are just not photogenic. Many backyard bird photographers rig up some natural looking scenes to attract their birds to. And there are many different ways to jerry-rig some natural spots for them to use. I was using zip strips to tie a branch to the top of my feeder, but I recently discovered that Wild Birds Unlimited has a 3-way branch holder. My main pole system is one of their pole systems, so I jumped on it. I currently have 2 branches coming out of it. The birds love to come in and land on them. And interesting enough, hummingbirds will stop and rest. Generally for the feeder, they'll fly in and hover before they feed, but I found that later in the day, they will feed and then go rest on the branches. They'll fly back in for some more food and then fly back. After observing this, it was pretty easy for me to set up an idea to get them, so I got my camera and went outside. Oh yeah, the camera. About that. I'm using a Nikon Z9, and one of two lenses depending on what I'm trying to go for. The camera is a 45 megapixel sensor, which lets me get a lot of detail and a lot of ability to crop. Since hummingbirds are small, I usually want to use my 500 f5.6 lens to get nice close-ups. This is great for birds at my feeder, but my hummingbird feeder is too close for that big lens. So I can use my 70 to 200 f2.8 lens and sit at my table and photograph them as they feed. I can put my 2x teleconverter on and get them even much larger. But this view has the window hook in the way. So sometimes I'll go out on the deck, sit really still and wait on them. And that's what led me to this photo. While I'm on my deck, I can isolate that one branch away from the rest of the clutter. The background is far enough away that I can blur it by using a low depth of field setting on the camera. The camera also sees all the shade from the tree and wants to expose for the background so you can, see the tree. But in doing so, it makes the branch which it's sitting on too bright. Once I adjust the exposure, the background darkens, and now the branch comes into a more true exposure. I adjust the camera to expose for the branch properly, and the background goes really dark. Combine that with the low depth of field, and you can seriously isolate a subject in the camera. If you look at the original out-of-camera photo, you'll see that we still have work to do. First, I need to crop in because my lens, which was set up for the feeder, that's just about 12 feet away, just isn't close enough for that branch, which is more like 40 feet away. I slightly adjusted my position to make sure the hummingbird's background was the darkest possible location, and then I shot off a few photos. Next, it was time to get them on the computer. Once I have it on my computer, I'll crop it. This particular shot was late in the day, so my camera sensitivity was cranked up really high, which creates a lot of digital noise. I used software techniques to remove that noise. Then I gave it a little bit more contrast, darkened up the background to end up with the final image. So one thing about the cropping, I'm a firm believer in trying the rule of thirds first. And that's a place where if you imagine a tic-tac-toe grid, you want to put your subject on one of the lines and preferably at one of the crossing points of the lines. So in this photo, I positioned the hummingbird on the right topmost cross, and I cropped it until the branch fell out the bottom left corner, giving you a nice leading line to bring you to the subject. So there is thought that goes into the final product. It starts by getting the best in-camera image that you can get, but there's always room to make it better in post-processing. So there you have it. Live in a hummingbird-rich environment, create a desirable place for them to feed, and with the right gear, patiently wait on them to come to the feeder. You'll eventually get them to land, and you're able to get this photo. So I hope this helps you understand how this photo came into existence. Until next time, this is Rob Miracle for Yo Photo Dude.